Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the RenCast. On today's episode, I am discussing the 2018 film from filmmaker Panos Cosmatos, Mandy, a movie starring Nicolas Cage. So, I think you kind of already know what kind of movie this is. But this movie is the second film from director Panos Cosmatos. He did a movie called Beyond the Black Rainbow in 2010, but this movie, Mandy, is really his first one to get... there's one of two, but Beyond the Black Rainbow was a movie that was visually interesting and lacked a lot of things other than that. But Mandy is really the first one to be critically acclaimed. I mean, if you look at the review scores on this movie, everyone views it very highly, especially critics. It has like an 81 on Metacritic, which is very high. So I went into this movie with pretty high expectations. The trailer looked amazing. Nicolas Cage was hilarious in the trailer. The visual style of the movie was incredibly interesting, and I liked the premise where Nicolas Cage was going to go fight some evil thing because his wife went missing or something. It was kind of vague, but in the movie, I went and saw it. Well, I didn't go and see it because it did come to theaters, but it also came to streaming services the same day, so I just stayed home and watched it. And I watched it, and I liked it. I really did like the movie. I don't think it's amazing. I don't think it's quite deserving of its incredibly high praise that it's getting. But it is, I think a lot of it, the praise especially, is because the movie is really unique in its presentation. The actual structure of the movie and the actual plot of the movie is pretty tried and true at this point. There's nothing too new. Basically, the story is that Nicolas Cage and his wife, who's played by actress, how do I pronounce her name? Okay, it's Andrea Risborough? Yeah, whatever. Nicolas Cage and Andrea are married, they live out in the woods, and then a religious cult kind of guy, leader, sees Mandy, played by Andrea, in the woods, and he wants her. He lusts after her. And so he orders his very religious followers to go get her for him. And then she kind of rejects him and humiliates him, so he murders her. He burns her alive, and this prompts Nicolas Cage to go after them and to get his revenge. So it's basically a revenge story. And what I just described as far as plot goes is the first hour of the movie. The movie is 2 hours long, and that's sort of my biggest issue with the movie. I guess I'll start with some negatives, because there aren't that many. I really do like the movie, but might as well get the negatives out of the way. I think the pacing of the movie is pretty rough. It's 2 hours long, and it very easily could have been hour 45, maybe even 90 minutes if you really started trimming it up. The first hour is the first act of the movie, and that's just too long for the first act of a movie to be. You want your first act to be between 25 to 40 minutes, depending on your runtime, of course. But this movie, it stretches it to about an hour. We don't get the inciting incident, which leads into Act 2, until over an hour into the movie. And that is not great. It makes the first hour pretty boring. If I was to rate this movie as halves, I would rate the first half of this movie kind of like a 5 or a 6, because it's pretty bland. I mean, the cinematography is really nice. The colors, the movie really does use interesting colors, and all of that's really great, and the movie does look nice, but stretching 30 minutes of material to an hour does take its toll on the movie and the audience. I think if you can get through the first hour, there's a really great movie in here. It's just that you do have to get through the first hour, and it is difficult, because there are scenes where you get the point of the scene, and then it goes on for another 10 minutes, and you're like, all right, why am I keep watching this? Why didn't they trim this? And there's so many scenes like this in the first half that just go on for way too long. It takes so long to get to the point that I feel like some of the effect of the second half is a little dampened because of this. I think the first half, again, if I was to rate it, would be like a 6, and the second half would be up there in like the 9s, 8, 9, 10-ish. I think the second half of this movie is excellent. I think most of the negatives that I have with the movie, most of the stuff that I really don't like, is in the first half, because what I really love about the movie is Nick Cage. I think he's hilarious in the movie. I think the dialogue is hilarious in the movie. I think the action sequences are amazing. I think the violence is amazing. But almost everything that I love about the movie is exclusively in the second half. The first half has some moments. The actor who plays Thomas Wayne, Bruce Wayne's father in Batman Begins, is in this movie, and he plays the main religious leader. And he's hilarious and amazing in the movie. I think he's really great, and his performance is really the only thing that bleeds over to the second half. He is so great in both halves of the movie. He knows exactly what movie he's in, and everyone knows exactly what movie they're making, and so he's just chewing scenery in every scene. He is getting so into it, and he's getting his facial expression into it and his body, and he's hilarious and amazing in the movie. And Nicolas Cage is in the second half. And for a protagonist, which Nicolas Cage is, to only be really in one half of the movie, I feel like that is another issue with it, where Mandy is such a central part of the first half, and then she gets burned alive, and that sets Nicolas Cage off to go fight these religious people. And then she's not in the second half, really. She's in some dream sequences, and that's it. And Nicolas Cage is the lead in the second half, but not in the first. So I feel like that does have some effect on the second half. I think Nicolas Cage is great in it, but we didn't really get to know him all that much. We got to know Mandy, but not him. And I guess it's fine, because the second half is so insane, and it is insane. Again, all the stuff that I love about the movie is in the second half. It's hilarious and violent and graphic and amazing. And I think the movie could have benefited from spreading that stuff out a little bit more. Just spread out the violence, spread out the hilarious, over-the-top performances and dialogue just a little bit more in the first half, and I think you would have had a way more consistent movie. And as it is, it's still pretty consistent. It's just that, again, the first half is a little weak. But once you get into the second half, this movie turns into an absolute riot. Watching it with friends is exactly the way that you should view this movie, because Nicolas Cage delivers a hilarious performance. There's a scene when he's in his bathroom drinking alcohol and just yelling. That is one of the best scenes of all time. And when he's going around just killing people, he takes like such joy in doing it. And there's a line where he says, "You ripped my shirt," over and over again as he's killing this guy, and it's the best. It's amazing. And all the special effects, all the special effects in the movie are really well done too. I think Panos Cosmatos, or whatever his name is, however you pronounce it, I think he's fully aware of the low-budget nature of the movie, and that showing too much would result in a lot of people going, "Oh, that doesn't look very good." So I think he's fully aware of that, and whenever there is a special effect, like, for example, the demon rider guys that are riding on motorcycles and ATVs, whenever he shows them, it's usually in dimly lit settings, sort of blurry or backlit, so it just shows their silhouette. I think he's fully aware that if you were to show these guys in broad daylight, they would not be intimidating. And he doesn't, and they look great. I think all the special effects in the movie look really good. Everything is done super well. All the gore effects look really good. There's some campy ones, of course, but the movie itself is pretty campy. But there are some there's one where he jabs his, like, scepter, whatever he has, through this guy's, like, skull, and it looks actually really good. It's really well done. And then there's one where he crushes a guy's skull that's very campy, very Evil Dead-esque, but everything looks great. I have no issues with the visual nature of the movie. I have no issues with the special effects of the movie. Everything is very well done. I think Panos is incredibly aware of what he's making, and he's incredibly aware of how to execute it to the best of its abilities, because it looks really nice, and there are some nice little motifs in this movie visually as well. There's a really nice moment near the end of the movie when Nicolas Cage is he finishes the deed, and he has this flashback to when he first met Mandy, and it's this shot where he is in like a bar, and it's sort of basically lit, and then it cuts to Mandy, and there's like lights that are flashing, and there's like strobe on her face, and I would turn to my friend and I said, that's the first shot in the movie that's not super stylized, the one of Nicolas Cage. And as soon as he sees her, his shot goes super stylized, and it's to imply that he is awestruck by her. It's love at first sight. And that's a really nice little motif that Panos puts into the movie. Just a little nice little thing. And I love all that stuff. I love pretty much everything that this movie does execution-wise. I don't have any problems with it. And I really like every performance in the movie, even though a lot of them are no-names. I think they do a great job. Of course, it is a campy B-movie that is sort of trashy. So when you have sort of not great performers, it works with this material because they know the movie is aware of how dumb and kind of trashy it is. So I liked all the performances. I liked the visual nature of the movie. I think all the special effects are great. I think the gore effects are really convincing. I really like Nicolas Cage. I think he's hilarious. The movie is both incredibly violent and incredibly funny. It's like a mix of horror and sci-fi and action and thriller and comedy. It has everything, and yet it seems to balance everything super well. Because there's movies like A Simple Favor that I talked about recently that seem so tone-deaf that I have no idea what the movie is trying to achieve, where it's like you have these comedic scenes where it feels like the actors are improvising, and then you have these scenes that are supposed to be taken seriously, and they're shot like identical, and everyone is performing the scenes identical, and so it leaves me very confused on how I'm supposed to feel in any scene, or what Paul Feig is even going for. I don't know what he was going for in that movie, but here it's pretty clear what Cosmatos is going for. It's very clear. He makes it evident what he is trying to achieve here, and I think he does. I think for the most part, this movie is really amazing. I think that if the first half was trimmed up a bit, if you cut down a couple scenes here and there, tightened up the pacing, and then spread out some of the campiness of the movie a little bit more, I think this is one of my favorites of the year. But as it is, it's still pretty great. I still have a great time watching it. I think I'll definitely be buying it when it comes out, but I can't say that it will be one of my best of the year movies. I can't say that as of right now. I've seen it twice right now, so that may change, but I'm not convinced that it will at this point. So while I do like it, and I do definitely recommend it, I do recommend it with a little bit of an asterisk. I think this movie is both very niche and very broad at the same time. You have to be in the mindset of that this movie is campy and violent and gruesome, and then you have to also be aware that it's sort of sci-fi horror comedy, and so it hits all these points, but you have to be a specific audience member in these points. So it's a weird one. It's very bizarre. It's a weird movie, and I could understand why a lot of people wouldn't like it, but I can understand totally why people love it too. But I'm sort of in the middle. I'm definitely more towards the camp of loving this movie, definitely, but I understand both sides, definitely. Yeah, I would highly recommend it, though. It's on streaming services like Fandango now. You can check it out there. I think it's still in theaters right now, so you can check it out there. Of course, at this point in time it is. So I'd say it's worth going to see, worth checking out, worth renting. So definitely do that. But that's it. That's all I have to say about the movie. Next week, I think this one I've been sort of grappling with. I'm not completely sure what I want to do next week, but I think I want to cover an older movie. Not super old, obviously, because I haven't watched a ton of old movies, but I think I want to cover 2001: A Space Odyssey, because it's 50th anniversary this year. It came out in re-release to IMAX this year, and it's getting a 4K Blu-ray release this year. So I think I want to cover 2001: A Space Odyssey. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, but I want to talk about it because I think it's great. So I'll be talking about that next week. So I'll see you then. Goodbye.